So, the first thing you should know is that I am not exactly the guy you'd expect to be glued to a plumber for more than 10 minutes. I mean, I'm not exactly a DIY disaster, but the last time I called a professional to fix my bathroom, I figured it'd be a quick in and out job. Replace a leaky faucet, maybe tighten a pipe or two, and then I'd be left alone with my evening and a cold beer. Instead, I ended up watching the guy take a shower in my apartment, and honestly, I still can't quite believe how that whole situation unfolded. Alright, let me back up a bit. I live in this pretty decent one-bedroom in Brooklyn. Nothing fancy but cozy enough for a guy who mostly works from home and binge watches way too many crime shows. The bathroom has always been a bit of a headache, mostly because the shower pressure was either a trickle or a flood. No in between. So, after a particularly frustrating morning, where I nearly slipped trying to balance under this sad excuse for a shower head, I finally decided to call a plumber. Enter Ethan. He showed up right on time, which was the first win of the day, because honestly, I was half expecting some vague sometime in the afternoon arrival window. Ethan was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, lean but not scrawny, with these deep brown eyes that somehow looked both tired and kind, like someone who's seen a lot but still manages a quiet optimism. He wore a worn-out flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and these jeans that had clearly seen better days. His hair was messy, like he'd run his hands through it a few times before coming to my place. I had to admit there was something easy about him, like he wasn't trying too hard, just genuinely doing his job. We started chatting while he poked around under the sink and behind the shower wall. He cracked a few jokes about how plumbing is the only profession where you're expected to be both a magician and a therapist. I laughed more than I usually do with strangers. Anyway, the job wasn't as simple as I thought. Ethan poked around, explained the pressure valve was shot and needed a full replacement. That meant ordering parts, which would take a couple of days. I was bummed, but figured, fine, I'll deal with it. Then, out of nowhere, as he was packing up his tools, he mentioned, "Hey, got any hot water? Took a long ride here, and my truck's busted. No shower till I get home." I chuckled. "Yeah, it's Brooklyn in summer. You're lucky the place doesn't smell like a dumpster fire yet." He smiled, kind of sheepishly, and then said, "Would you mind if I used your shower? Just a quick rinse. Promise I'm not weird." It felt like one of those moments where you hesitate, because, well, who just lets a plumber shower in their apartment? But something about him, maybe the way he looked like he genuinely needed it, or just that casual vibe he had, made me say yes before I could even talk myself out of it. And that's when things started getting complicated. I left him to it, telling myself it was no big deal. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat on the couch, thinking about how this was probably the weirdest plumbing job I'd ever had. But as I heard the water running, the apartment felt different somehow, like I wasn't just watching a plumber fix my bathroom anymore, but watching someone step into my world in a way I never expected. That's when I realized maybe this wasn't going to be just another random service call. Maybe Ethan was going to be the kind of unexpected that sticks around, but I had no idea how right I was, or how quickly things would change from guy who fixed my pipes to someone who'd leave a real mark on my life. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me just say, I never thought a plumber would end up taking a shower in my place, let alone that it'd be the start of something I wouldn't forget anytime soon. So I'm sitting there on my couch, beer in hand, and I'm thinking about how weird this whole thing is when the water shuts off. A minute later, Ethan steps out of the bathroom wrapped in one of my big fluffy towels, and I'm suddenly very aware that I'm basically living in a rom-com I never signed up for. He looks at me with this awkward grin, water droplets still clinging to his curls. "Thanks, man. Seriously, that was way overdue." I nod, trying to play it cool, although inside, I'm a little stunned. He's standing there, towel wrapped tight, eyes darting around like he's trying to figure out what to say next. So I say the stupidest thing I could think of. "You know, we should probably install a new shower head while you're here." He laughs, that warm, easy laugh that somehow makes the room feel smaller and more intimate. "Yeah? You want me to stick around longer?" I shrugged, trying not to sound too eager, but honestly, I kinda did. "Well, I mean, if you're not busy." He steps closer, and suddenly, the whole thing feels a little less like me and a plumber, and more like two guys in a weird little bubble where only we exist. I'm not in a rush. That's when I realize my heart's doing this ridiculous flip-flop dance, and I'm not even mad about it. We spend the next hour poking around the bathroom, planning what needs to be done once the parts come in. But mostly we talk about dumb stuff. Favorite movies, bad dates, what it's like growing up in this city. Ethan grew up in Queens, and his voice softens when he talks about his family, like there's something he's not saying. I want to ask, but I hold back, figuring maybe he'll share when he's ready. At some point, I'm watching him lean over the sink, hands working on the pipes, and I can't help but notice the curve of his neck, the way his muscles move under his shirt. It's distracting as hell, and I have to stop myself from staring too much. So Ethan says, breaking the silence, "You live alone?" "Yeah, just me and my cat. Mostly me, though." She's more interested in judging me from the windowsill. He smiles, this quiet kind of smile that feels like permission. That's cool. It's nice to have your own space. It is. And somehow, in that moment, it feels even nicer, like maybe sharing this space, even just this once, means something. Then my phone buzzes, and I glance at the screen. Work stuff. Boring. But I don't want to ruin the vibe, so I tuck it away. Ethan looks over, eyebrows raised. "You're not one of those guys who's glued to their phone every second, huh?" "Nope, I'm old school like that," I grin. "Except when I'm at work. Then it's all screens all the time." He nods, then gestures toward the kitchen. "Want something to drink?" I don't want to overstay my welcome. I wave him off. "Nah, you can stay as long as you want. You're not just a plumber now. You're my accidental house guest." He laughs, and it sounds like music in the quiet apartment. The evening stretches on. We end up watching a couple of episodes of some random show I'm hooked on, and for a while, it feels like the world outside just fades away. Eventually, Ethan stands up, rubbing the back of his neck. I should probably get going before my boss wonders where I am. "Yeah, of course. Thanks again for everything." He hesitates for a second, then looks at me like he's trying to read my mind. "Hey, maybe I could come back when the parts arrive? Help with the install?" I want to say yes so badly it hurts, but I play it cool. Sounds like a plan. He smiles, and there's this flicker of something in his eyes. Hope? Maybe more. As he grabs his jacket and heads for the door, I realize that the plumber who took a shower in my place isn't going anywhere fast. And honestly, I don't want him to. The next couple of days felt like waiting for a sequel to a movie I didn't even know I wanted to watch. The parts for my shower valve were supposed to arrive on Thursday, and honestly, I found myself checking my phone more than usual. Not for messages or work emails, but just hoping Ethan would text or call to confirm the install. Thursday rolls around, and right on schedule, there's a knock at my door early in the afternoon. I open it to find Ethan, tool bag slung over his shoulder, looking like he belongs here now. He gives me that same easy grin that somehow makes me feel like the whole apartment's warmer. "Ready to fix this mess?" he asks. "Absolutely," I say, stepping aside to let him in. As he sets down his bag and starts unpacking, I realize how comfortable this feels. Like maybe this is how all the best things start. Unexpectedly, with a little bit of chaos and a lot of promise. We get to work, and I learn more about plumbing than I ever thought I would. Ethan talks me through what he's doing, but mostly, we just talk. Between tightening bolts and testing the water pressure, there's this unspoken rhythm developing between us. He's easy to be around, like the kind of person you can sit with in silence and still feel connected. At one point, I catch him glancing at me, and I'm not sure if it's because he's concentrating or if there's something else there. My heart does that stupid flip again, and I try not to make a fool of myself. By the time the shower's finally fixed, it's late afternoon, and the sun is streaming through the window, casting this beautiful golden light across the apartment. Ethan steps back, wipes his hands on a rag, and turns on the shower to test it. "Perfect," he says, grinning. "See? No more sad showers." I laugh and say, "I owe you big time." He shrugs, but there's this softness in his eyes. "I'll hold you to that." We end up sitting on the couch, the air between us lighter now, but charged with something I can't quite name. He tells me about his favorite dive bars in Queens, and I admit I'm terrible at karaoke, which earns me a playful shove. Then, out of nowhere, Ethan looks at me and says, "You ever think about just leaving everything behind and going somewhere new? No plans, no expectations. Just new." I blink, caught off guard. Honestly? Yeah, more times than I care to admit. He nods, like he understands something I haven't said out loud. Maybe that's why this feels different, he says quietly. Like a fresh start. I look at him, really look, and suddenly it hits me. This isn't just about a broken shower or a random guy who needed to clean up. It's about two people both looking for something they can't quite put into words yet. We sit there, the afternoon fading into evening, and I realize I don't want this to end. Not tonight, not ever. Ethan stands up to leave, but he pauses at the door. Hey, if you're not busy this weekend, maybe we could grab a drink? My treat. I grin, already knowing the answer. I'd like that. And just like that, the plumber who took a shower in my apartment became the guy the first wanted to see again. Not just to fix my bathroom, but to maybe, just maybe, see where this unexpected connection could lead. Saturday night rolls around faster than I expected. I'm pacing my apartment, trying to decide if I should wear the shirt Ethan noticed last time. The one I thought was just comfortable, but maybe now it feels like a little signal. You know, like, hey, I'm trying but not overdoing it. After way too long staring at my closet, I settle on a simple dark tee and jeans. Because honestly, if he's into me, it won't be because of a damn shirt. When I hear the buzz at the door, my heart decides to race like it's in a marathon. I open it up, and there he is, Ethan with that easy smile, holding a couple of pizza boxes like the perfect casual date accessory. He's even wearing that flannel again, sleeves rolled up just like the first day, and I swear, there's this kind of effortless charm about him that catches me every time. Hope you're hungry, he says, stepping inside. Always, I reply, stepping aside to let him in. We settle on the couch with the pizza between us. It's cheesy and way too greasy, but somehow it's perfect, kind of like this night. We're talking about everything and nothing, his childhood in Queens, the weirdest plumbing job he's ever had, which apparently involved a raccoon, don't ask, and my own embarrassing stories about bad dates with guys I met online. At one point, Ethan reaches over to grab a slice and his fingers brush mine. I catch his eye and feel this weird jolt, like someone just turned the volume up on the world around us. He doesn't pull away, but he doesn't say anything either. Just keeps smiling like nothing's changed, but everything has. As the night gets later, we move from the couch to the windowsill, looking out over the city lights. There's something peaceful about sharing this quiet moment with someone, not rushing to fill the silence, just being there. I don't do this often, Ethan admits, breaking the silence. Just hang out with someone and not think about work or all the crap going on. I nod, feeling the same. Me neither. He turns to me, this serious look in his eyes. I'm glad it's you. My chest tightens, and I don't know if it's the wine or just him. I say, me too. There's a long pause, and then he leans in just a little, like testing the waters. I don't move away. Instead, I close the gap, and our lips meet. It's gentle at first, tentative, but then it deepens, like we're both been waiting for this moment without even realizing it. Afterward, we just sit there, wrapped up in each other's arms, the city humming quietly below. It's the kind of night that feels like the start of something real. Not perfect, not rushed, but honest. We talk more about hopes and fears and what we want from life. Ethan tells me about his dreams of opening a little cafe someday, a place with strong coffee and even stronger community. I tell him about my writing, how I'm always chasing stories that make people feel less alone. When he finally gets up to leave, it feels like a slow goodbye rather than an ending. So, he says, same time next week? I grin, already looking forward to it. Definitely. As I lock the door behind him, I can't help but think about how strange life is sometimes. A busted shower, a random plumber, a spontaneous shower. None of it would have seemed important on its own, but together, it's the story I'm glad I get to tell. And whatever comes next, I know it's going to be worth it. The week that followed felt like a weird mix of normal and electric. We texted, nothing heavy, just little check-ins about work or what we were eating or what dumb show we were binging. But every time my phone buzzed, it was Ethan. And I caught myself smiling way more than I expected. When Thursday rolled around, I was already half excited and half nervous about him coming over again to finish some other plumbing fixes. The parts that had arrived last time weren't the only things that needed work. Apparently, my sink faucet had started dripping like it was crying or something. He showed up right on time again, and the moment he stepped inside, something just clicked. I swear I could feel it in the air like static. Ethan was different today. Not just the same easygoing guy the first met a few days ago, but somehow more open, like he was letting me see a little more of himself. We got to work on the faucet, and this time there wasn't a rush. I made coffee, and he took his time fixing the leak, humming under his breath like he was in his own little world. I watched him, and I realized I was way too into this. Watching how the sunlight hit his face, the way his hands moved with purpose, the way he'd occasionally look up and catch me staring, offering this shy smile that made my stomach flip. After the faucet was fixed, Ethan leaned back against the counter and said, "You know, I'm glad I took that stupid shower here. Otherwise, I might have never met you." I felt this warmth spread through my chest. Me too. There was a pause, and then he looked at me with those deep brown eyes, a little vulnerable. I don't usually do this. Meeting someone, hanging out, feeling whatever this is. "Yeah?" I asked, heart pounding. "Me neither." We stood there for a moment. The kind of silence that's thick and full of possibility. Then, without warning, Ethan stepped closer, and I could feel the heat from his body. "I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," I said, maybe a little too quickly, but I meant it. We kissed again, slower this time, like we were both learning the rhythm. And when we finally pulled apart, I saw something honest and hopeful in his eyes. The weekend came, and we made plans that felt less like a date and more like two people who had been waiting to find each other. We wandered the city, grabbing coffee at that weird little spot Ethan loved, sharing stories about our lives and laughing until our sides hurt. It was easy, natural, like we'd known each other longer than a few days. One night, after a few too many drinks and way too much talking, Ethan took my hand and said, "I want you to meet someone." "Who?" I asked, curious but cautious. "My sister. She's visiting next week. I think you'll like her." I was surprised, but also kind of touched that he wanted me to be part of that part of his life. I'd like that. The days blurred into each other, and before I knew it, Ethan was at my door again, this time with a bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked up on the way over. They were bright and a little messy, kind of like him. "I saw these and thought of you," he said, handing them over. I laughed, feeling like a total sap. "Thanks. They're perfect." We sat on my balcony, the city sparkling below us, and talked about everything and nothing. It was one of those nights where time seemed to slow down, and I realized I was falling for him faster than I thought possible. But as much as I wanted to believe this was the start of something amazing, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Ethan's story, something he wasn't telling me yet. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to find out. Still, I decided to hold on to the moments we had, the easy laughter, the gentle touches, the way he made me feel seen. Because sometimes, love sneaks up in the most unexpected ways, like a plumber taking a shower in your apartment and turning your whole world upside down. It was a Tuesday when Ethan finally let me in on what he'd been holding back. I say finally, but honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready to hear it. We'd settled into this easy rhythm over the past couple of weeks. Texts, dinners, lazy mornings, with greasy breakfast sandwiches from that tiny diner he swore by. There was laughter, late-night talks, and that slow-building tension that made me think, this could really go somewhere. But there was always this flicker in his eyes, a kind of hesitation that I couldn't quite place. That afternoon, he showed up unannounced, something he rarely did, and I noticed the slump in his shoulders before I even opened the door. There was no flannel today, just a plain gray tee that clung a little too tight around his arms, and jeans that looked worn in all the right places. "Hey," I said, stepping aside. "Everything okay?" He shrugged, but the way he avoided my eyes told me otherwise. "Can I come in? I don't really feel like standing out here." I nodded, and we moved inside. The city was just noisy enough outside to fill the silence between us, but the apartment felt unexpectedly heavy. He sat down on the couch, and I took the seat beside him, not knowing what to say. After a beat, Ethan exhaled deeply. I haven't been totally honest with you. My heart sped up. Okay. He ran a hand through his hair, like he was trying to figure out how to start. I'm not just a plumber, you know. I've been working jobs like this for years, but it's not my real passion. I'm trying to get my certification to be an electrician. It's tough, though. I'm juggling classes, work, and, well, life. I blinked. That's a lot. Yeah, and, I'm not super close with my family. My sister's the only one I really talk to, and even that's complicated. He looked up at me, a little wry smile pulling at his lips. Which is why I wanted you to meet her. I guess I wanted you to know I'm not just this guy who shows up to fix your shower. I reached over and squeezed his hand. Thanks for telling me. I'm glad, actually. I like knowing who you really are. The tension in his shoulders eased a bit, and we sat there for a while, hands intertwined, just being. A few days later, Ethan's sister, Maya, came into town. I was nervous about meeting her, but she was welcoming in that way. Some people just naturally are. Open smile, easy laugh, and a sharp wit that kept the conversation flowing. Over coffee, she told me stories about growing up with Ethan, how stubborn he could be, but how fiercely loyal. Listening to her, I felt like I was getting a new piece of the puzzle that was Ethan. One night, after Maya left, Ethan and I ended up back on the balcony, looking out over the city like we had a million times before. This time, though, the air felt different, more real, more urgent. I've been thinking, Ethan said, voice low, about what I want, about us. My breath caught. Yeah? He nodded. I'm tired of just getting by. I want something more. I want to build something, you know, with someone. I smiled, feeling something inside me shift. Me too. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. Maybe it's crazy, but I want this. Us. I leaned into his touch, heart pounding. It's not crazy. It's the best thing that's happened to me in a long time. That night, we finally let ourselves imagine what could be, not just the fleeting moments, but a real future together. It wasn't perfect, and we both knew there'd be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like hope wasn't just a word. It was something alive between us. And honestly, I was ready to dive in. The days after that night felt like we were walking on this delicate line between everything being new and everything feeling like it had always been meant to be. Ethan and I settled into this easy, comfortable kind of closeness, but I could sense underneath it all there was still some tension, some fear of what might happen if we let ourselves fall too hard. I remember one evening, about a week after we'd talked on the balcony, I was cooking dinner. Well, attempting to cook, and Ethan was sitting at the kitchen counter watching me fumble with the spices like I didn't know what I was doing. You sure you don't want me to take over? He joked, flashing that grin that always made me forget how many times I'd burned the garlic. Nah, this is quality entertainment for you. He laughed, but then his face softened. I'm glad you're here. Really? I paused, stirring the sauce a little too vigorously, trying to keep my voice casual. Me too. Then, out of nowhere, he looked up at me. Eyes serious but gentle. Can I ask you something? Shoot. He hesitated, like he was weighing how much to share. Have you ever been scared? Like, really scared of what falling for someone could mean? I stopped stirring. The question hit harder than I expected. Yeah, more times than I can count. It's terrifying to open yourself up and risk getting hurt. He nodded slowly. That's exactly it. I want this. I want you, but I'm scared. I've been hurt before. And sometimes I think the safest thing is to just keep my distance. I moved closer and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. I get that, but sometimes the biggest risk leads to the best reward. He smiled, a little shaky but real. You're pretty good at sounding like a cheesy rom-com. I laughed. Maybe, but I mean it. That night we talked for hours about fears, about past heartbreaks, about what we wanted from the future. It wasn't all sunshine and roses, but it felt honest. And that honesty made me feel closer to him than I ever had with anyone. A few days later, Ethan invited me to a part of his world I hadn't seen yet, his night classes. I wasn't sure what to expect, But when I showed up at the community college, I found him waiting outside with that same nervous energy I'd come to recognize. Inside, he introduced me to a couple of classmates, and I saw this other side of him, the studious, determined guy who was chasing a dream while working his butt off. Watching him jot down notes, ask questions, and focus like his future depended on it made me respect him even more. After class, we grabbed coffee at a tiny cafe nearby. The conversation flowed naturally, but there was this undercurrent of something unspoken, something we were both trying to figure out. I finally asked, "Do you ever feel like you're juggling too much?" He sighed, staring into his cup. "Every day. But this us, it makes me want to keep going, like there's a light at the end of the tunnel." I reached across the table and touched his hand. "We'll find that light together." He smiled, this soft, hopeful smile that made my heart ache with how much I wanted to protect him. But as the weeks passed, balancing work, school, and this new relationship wasn't always easy. There were moments when Ethan seemed distant, distracted, like he was carrying a weight he wasn't ready to share. I tried to be patient, to give him space, but sometimes the silence between us felt like a wall. One night, after a long day, we sat on my couch in silence. I finally asked, "What's going on?" He looked at me, eyes tired but honest. "It's just a lot. I'm trying to build a better life, but some days it feels like I'm digging myself deeper instead of climbing out." I nodded, pulling him into a hug. "I'm here, whatever you need." He leaned into me, and for the first time, I felt him really let go. It wasn't a perfect moment. There was rawness and vulnerability, but it was real. In that moment, I knew that love wasn't about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about showing up, even when it's hard, and choosing each other every damn day. And for the first time since Ethan took that unexpected shower in my apartment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we were both exactly where we were supposed to be. It was a chilly Sunday morning when everything finally felt like it settled into place. Ethan and I were sitting on the floor of my living room, surrounded by half-assembled furniture and scattered tools. Because of course, in true us fashion, we decided to tackle organizing the apartment together after a lazy breakfast. The light coming through the windows was soft, casting this warm glow that made the whole place feel like home. He looked over at me, a quiet smile playing on his lips. "You know, I never thought fixing a shower would lead me here," he said, shaking his head like he still couldn't quite believe it. I laughed, feeling this swell of affection I couldn't hide. "Neither did I, but I'm glad it did." We paused for a moment, the kind of comfortable silence that comes from knowing someone so well they don't need words all the time. Then Ethan reached out and took my hand, fingers lacing with mine in that familiar way that always made my heart race, even after all this time. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, the part about choosing each other every day," he said softly. "I want that. I want us." I squeezed his hand, the weight of everything we'd been through, making the moment feel huge, but also perfectly natural. "Me too, no matter what comes next." We leaned into each other, a simple kiss that held all the promises we didn't need to say out loud. Later, as we stood side by side looking at the little apartment that was slowly becoming ours, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: hope. Not the frantic, grasping kind, but the steady, sure kind that grows when two people decide to build something real together. Ethan caught my eye and grinned. "So what's next? More plumbing emergencies?" I laughed, resting my head on his shoulder. "I have a feeling life with you is going to be full of surprises. But honestly, I'm ready for all of them." And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the city and the warmth of someone who'd become my home, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be. Sometimes, love shows up in the most unexpected ways, even in a plumber taking a shower in your apartment. And when it does, all you have to do is be brave enough to let it stay.